New flagships coming out in 2017 include the HTC Ultra and the LG V10 all have this unique secondary display, but this feature is actually not unique to the smartphone industry. If we unwind the hands of time and look back to 2010, this concept first came to the US by form of the Samsung Continuum, which was meant as kind of this mid-tier Android phone powered by version 2.1 of Android and had a 1 GHz processor and belonged to the original series of Samsung Galaxy S devices. Hey folks, here at OS Reviews, you're watching our retro look back and throwback review of the Samsung Continuum, a very innovative phone for Samsung, which in my opinion rarely takes massive risks in terms of hardware design, and this is one of the few exceptions to that rule. However, the phone was plagued by a number of usability issues and ultimately was not very successful commercially. Taking a quick look at the hardware design first, on the front we have access to a Corning Gorilla Glass protected Super AMOLED touchscreen display. The primary screen measures 3.4 inches diagonally, and it's an 800 by 480 resolution panel with pretty good viewing angles and a so-so 233 pixel per inch. The bottom features a secondary ticker display which shows you extra notifications, time, date information, weathers, as well as other social media updates. There aren't too many apps that take advantage of this ticker display, but we'll go through them a little bit more when we talk about the software. One omission of the Samsung Continuum is a front-facing camera, so unfortunately you aren't able to place phone calls or Skype video chat using this handset. There is a proximity sensor otherwise, and you notice that the standard capacitive controls for Android, including back, home, and menu, are located sandwiched in between the ticker display and the main screen, which is a feature that we don't always love. We wish that the ticker display could also act as kind of these menu navigation keys when no notifications are being displayed. Another interesting thing about the Continuum is it features squeeze sensors. Essentially, the centers and the edges of the phone are touch sensitive as well, so that when you pick it up in the right spot, it turns on just the ticker display, so you can just use it to glance at your time, at your weather, in addition to quick notifications, which is a pretty smart use, and it makes it easier to use this ticker display as opposed to tapping on the power key located all the way on the very top next to the 3.5mm headphone jack. Other design cues include a volume rocker, which is separated and very tactile. There's also a micro USB port for charging. It takes about 2 hours to completely charge the user replaceable 1,500 milliamp hour capacity battery. And on the other side, there is a micro SD slot next to a two-stage camera shutter key, which you can tap on once to autofocus and then take your image. And afterwards, the back just features a 5 megapixel autofocus enabled camera with LED flash. There are two speakers, one on the top, one on the bottom. So the volume as far as playing back music and sound is actually quite good on the Samsung Continuum. You can see that it's a typical Samsung build, which is completely plastic back in the day, although it was quite lightweight and it felt like a pebble in the hand. So the ergonomics are pretty decent. And behind here, there's a user replaceable battery along with, some additional information about the phone, like the IMEI number. So let's take a quick look at the interface here. Again, we have a very early build of Android, just Android version 2.1 on top of Samsung's TouchWiz user interface. TouchWiz has always been a very complete interface in the sense that it gives a ton of proprietary apps. So some people aren't fans of all of the tweaks they've made on top of Android, but it's also fairly easy to pick up and start using for first-time smartphone folks. And you can see the lock screen here features a time and date information and a simple slide to unlock with a puzzle. Afterwards, we're greeted to a pretty clean interface, although there are a few annoyances here, such as the use of Bing as the search engine and Bing Maps as opposed to the typical Google search and the Google Maps. So they've replaced some of those services, and in my opinion, that's not as easy to use, and you can't actually remove these default programs, which is a little bit annoying. The phone comes with virtually no built-in flash storage, so you definitely need to use the memory card if you plan on installing apps, in addition to taking media content with the camera. Speaking of, let's take a quick look at the camera first. We can launch it just by tapping on the camera shutter key. And again, you can see that we don't have a memory card installed at the moment, which is why we can't really record anything. But you can kind of tell that focusing on content is fairly simple. You can record video up to 720p HD resolution. And I can also tap on the camera icon there to swap into the camera taking mode. You can see the focusing works pretty quickly, and you have a host of settings in terms of changing the resolution, applying filters, and when you're done, you can also go ahead and edit your images. So it's pretty easy to use as far as the interface is concerned. I found the placement of these Android keys located in between the ticker display and the main display to be a little bit awkward when I was first using the phone. But after a bit of usage, I got used to it just because my fingers kind of naturally rested on this position. But it's pretty easy to accidentally trigger or hit something, which is something that they should have considered, maybe just moving these buttons onto the bottom instead for easier ergonomics. So taking a look at the ticker display, we have the weather information icon, and you can tap on this to launch into the full weather bug application. And you need to enter a town or a city the first time you set it up, and afterwards you can take a quick look at your weather updates. I can swipe between the ticker display to have access to my full notifications. In here, it will display any notifications from social media, including Facebook and Twitter integration, new emails, SMS text messages, and missed calls, which are all pretty easy to do. I can also tap on this key here to quickly look at all of these in one consolidated place. So that's another hub-like view that Samsung has built in. But essentially that's it. So very limited in terms of what you can do otherwise with the ticker display. Just like on the V10 and on the HTC U Ultra, it doesn't seem to be a lot of third-party apps taking advantage of this unique secondary display. When we take a look at some of the other things on the phone, it is fairly typical for the age. It has a 1 gigahertz Samsung processor, which for the time was actually fairly decent, although it seems to be a little bit sluggish now. You have the ability still to load up web pages and render them correctly. There is pinch to zoom, although there is only the Google Marketplace as opposed to the newer Google Play Store. And a lot of apps, of course, won't install anymore on this older version of the device. But you can see quite a few bloatware has been installed by Samsung. Some of them useful, some of them not as useful. There are a few for navigation purposes. There's some for utilities like a clock and calendar that have been redesigned to look a bit more unique as well as simplified in the UI UX perspective. And transitions are fairly smooth still. There's Facebook built on here, a cradle feature. There's this memo and mini diary functionality, which essentially allows you to quickly take an image and write down a journal entry for each day if you want to do that. MySpace really shows the phone's age here. A few built-in games. There's Kindle support. Gmail is built on here. Google Talk for free calling using Wi-Fi. There is also a YouTube client. You can view Word and PDF documents as well, so it makes for a decent productivity experience. VCast apps from Verizon, so a bit of bloatware there. Think Free Office, and there's also a Tetris kind of demo built. Checking out the default browser very quickly here, you can see that full pages will still load and render correctly, although it's a little bit jumpy and not everything will be optimized for the screen. A lot of the security certificates are now out of date, and so I would really recommend, if you can, installing a updated and upgraded browser from the marketplace, and so you can still find those there, like Opera Mini, for instance. But you can see pinch to zoom gestures are still going to work, and you can load up most complex websites like New York Times and YouTube without too many problems. This is what the interface looks like. It's basically a stock version of the WebKit-based browser that was on most of Samsung's products back in the day. You can see the keyboard here is pre-included with swipe, so you can do more complex and longer characters and words, and it automatically corrects it. The touchscreen here is very responsive, although it doesn't seem to be super sensitive as far as typing words really rapidly, which is why using swipe can make your typing experience more accurate and faster. And you can also switch the orientation of the phone to get a larger keyboard to type on. It is slightly awkward just because you can see the phone's proportions are created in this way where you have to kind of type and shift your fingers to the left of the phone because a portion of the edge is taken up by the ticker screen. So it takes a little bit of adjustment just to type on here, and the screen is definitely smaller than most modern day smartphones are. So going back to this device, it definitely took a bit of time to get used to. You can see that even the default browser is using Bing as a search engine instead of using Google services. So that's something that you can tweak if you want to change it in the settings. So browser still works, but obviously no longer the best thing in the world. So in 2017, I thought it's just a really interesting time to look back at the Samsung Continuum because it was such a unique product in my mind. It was kind of when Samsung's Galaxy S series first started to take root here in the United States and internationally, and this was one of the most unique handsets that they created, but it wasn't super successful, unfortunately. With that being said, we can tell that over the past 7 years, Samsung has really refined and continued to push the boundaries of their software, and now they've created a lot more high-end devices So we can really tell how far that Samsung and TouchWiz has evolved over the years since the early days displayed on the Samsung Continuum. Obviously no longer a great phone, I would say, in 2017, unless you're just planning on getting one for emergency phone calls. The talk quality and the sound quality is still pretty good, but for more complex tasks, it doesn't do a great job. It works decently for social media notifications just because of this ticker display, but the screen size really is hampered just because it's a lot smaller than a lot of modern day phones with 4, 5, or 6-inch displays, whereas this is a bit smaller even than the first generation iPhone, coming in at only 3.4 inches. But otherwise, it was kind of expected for a phone of its age, and it certainly brought a lot of unique features to the table and continued to push in terms of what hardware could do on running on Android OS. So you can check out more details about the Samsung Continuum in our Retro Throwback article, but for now this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. This was our look back at the very unique Samsung Galaxy S Continuum.